The room stayed frozen after his words, the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you can hear your own pulse, and the billionaire sat there untouched by it, his posture calm, his expression unreadable, as if silence were a language he had mastered long ago. People had been staring at him all evening, at his tailored suit, the quiet authority in the way he lifted his glass, the faint accent that bent his English just enough to mark him as foreign, but none of them had truly seen him. They saw money. They saw mystery. They saw a man who didn't belong. The waitress felt it the moment she approached the table again, tray balanced on one hand, the other steady despite the tension crawling up her spine, because she had seen this kind of silence before, the kind born not from peace but from misunderstanding. She placed the plate down gently, closer than necessary, and for a split second their eyes met. His were dark, observant, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. He nodded once, polite, distant, and turned back to his phone, scrolling through messages written in a flowing script no one around him could read. A man at the bar snorted under his breath, muttering something about rich foreigners who don't even speak English properly, and laughter followed, thin and ugly. The billionaire heard it. The waitress saw it register in the tightening of his jaw, the smallest betrayal of emotion. She hesitated, then moved away, but the moment lodged itself in her chest like a splinter, because she knew what it was to be surrounded by people and still be utterly alone. Minutes later, the manager leaned toward her and whispered sharply that table 12 was high maintenance, and that she should hurry them along, that they didn't want trouble. Trouble. The word tasted bitter to her. She returned to the table, asked softly if everything was all right, and he answered with a courteous yes, his English precise but careful, like someone walking on cracked ice. When she turned to leave, he added something in Arabic under his breath, not meant for anyone else, a phrase heavy with resignation, and she froze mid-step. Her heart kicked hard. She hadn't heard that language spoken aloud in years, not since her father's voice used to fill their small apartment at night, telling stories of deserts and cities that never slept. She swallowed, unsure, afraid of embarrassing herself, but the words echoed too clearly to ignore. Slowly, she turned back, and this time she spoke, not in English, not loudly, just enough, replying to him in fluent Arabic, her accent soft but sure. The effect was immediate. He looked up as if struck by lightning, his eyes widening, the practiced composure cracking open. For the first time that night, the room truly disappeared for him. He stared at her, searching her face, and asked a question in Arabic, quick and disbelieving, and she answered without thinking, the language flowing back like a river finding its old course. Around them, people sensed something had shifted but couldn't name it. They leaned in, curious, irritated, confused. The billionaire straightened in his chair, emotion flickering across his features, surprise, relief, something dangerously close to gratitude. He asked where she learned to speak like that, and she told him simply, honestly, that it was her father's language, that she grew up with it, that she never expected to use it here. He smiled then, a real smile, not the polite curve he'd worn all evening, and thanked her in a voice that carried weight and warmth. The manager noticed, frowned, and started toward the table, but stopped when he saw the man reach for his wallet and place it gently on the table, not opening it yet, just resting his hand on it as if grounding himself. He spoke again in Arabic, his words slower now, deeper, telling her how exhausting it was to live surrounded by noise you couldn't answer, how people assumed silence meant ignorance, how wealth only made the distance wider. She listened, nodding, forgetting for a moment that she was at work, that eyes were on them, because stories like this demanded attention. Somewhere behind them a glass clinked, a chair scraped, life went on, but at table 12 something rare was unfolding, two lives intersecting through a language that refused to be ignored. And as the waitress answered him, reassuring, respectful, the kind of response no one had offered him all night, a few patrons began to realize that whatever they thought they knew about the man sitting there was wrong. This wasn't just a rich foreigner. This was someone with a story, one they had dismissed without ever trying to understand. Moments like these are why stories matter, why listening changes everything. The moment the billionaire rises from his chair, not abruptly, not dramatically, but with a calm dignity that somehow commands the entire restaurant without him saying a word. Conversations trail off. Forks pause mid-air. Even the manager freezes a few steps away, sensing, instinctively, that something irreversible is about to happen. The billionaire speaks first in Arabic, quietly, thanking the waitress for reminding him what respect feels like when it's spoken in the right language. Then he switches to English, his voice steady but carrying farther than before, explaining to the table and to anyone listening that understanding is not about accents or wealth or appearances, but about effort. He gestures gently toward the waitress, introducing her not by name yet, but as the first person here tonight who truly saw me, and that single sentence lands heavier than any confrontation could have. The man who mocked him earlier shifts uncomfortably. One of the businessmen at the table clears his throat, suddenly aware that his earlier assumptions are now exposed. The manager rushes forward, overly polite now, apologizing for any inconvenience, offering complimentary desserts, wine, anything to smooth the moment over, but the billionaire smiles kindly and says that nothing is broken that needs fixing, except perhaps perspective. He asks the waitress her name at last, listens carefully as she says it, repeats it correctly, and that small act sends a visible wave of emotion through her. He tells her, still in Arabic, that her father would be proud, and she blinks, stunned, because she hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that from a stranger. Then he does something no one expects.